Hi everyone, I'm Annamarie Hedman, Certified Health Coach for the H2 Life NB. Today we're going to be making one of our family favorites, which is a spinach enchilada casserole. As you know, being here in Texas, Tex-Mex cuisine is really popular, but sometimes not the healthiest for you. So I'm going to show you some tips and tricks so that you can make this dish a little bit more nutritious for you and your family. Okay, so the very first step of this spinach enchilada casserole is the sauce. It's definitely all about the sauce because that's where you're going to find a lot of the flavor for this dish. It makes it really yummy. So for this recipe, you're going to need 1/4 cup of chopped onion and 1/4 cup of red bell pepper. So that's what I'm going to do myself right now. And just to kind of show you more or less what 1/4 cup looks like. Right, here's a little measuring cup here so you can kind of get an idea of what that amount is, okay? So you can use sweet onion if you have that on hand. You could use red onion, you could use yellow onion. You know, really the onion choice doesn't so much matter. We are going to puree this sauce at the very end. So you can try to chop as tiny as you want. But at the very end, we're going to go ahead and put it in the food processor. So if you don't get it very small, that's okay. All right, and then for our red bell pepper, we are going to do that exact same thing. So just kind of a fun trick when I was first learning how to cook and how to cut a bell pepper. If you cut it through the top, right, you can kind of save the little pieces on the top end, and then like you see here, you just kind of go down the side so that you can avoid all of the seeds and all of that extra mess. So again, you're just going to finely chop your red bell pepper, and then you can always leave the extra, put it in a Tupperware, use it for a nice little veggie omelet in the morning. So all kinds of extra things that you can do with those veggies. Okay, so again, I'm just going to kind of finely chop the red bell pepper and onion. Okay, and then you're going to get your garlic. So I typically use about 1 clove, so a pretty decent sized clove of garlic. And you, just like with the pepper and onion, are going to finely chop that. So a little trick with the garlic, right? Take your knife flat, kind of smash it to break the skin, and then peel it open. And very carefully cut that garlic. Okay? All right. Okay, so you're gonna have to move with me here, and we are gonna go to the stove, right? So as that's happening, by the way, make sure that you preheat your oven to 375. So that's something that we're gonna do together. So I'm gonna move over here, and I'm gonna preheat my oven to 375 as the sauce is cooking, okay? I need about 1 tablespoon of olive oil. And olive oil, as you know, is a really great healthy fat. But we're only going to need about 1 tablespoon, and we're going to heat up our stove to where it's on about medium heat. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Then we are going to put the onion, bell pepper, and garlic. So directly from your cutting board into the pan, as you can see here. And we're just gonna kind of stir it around so that the olive oil can coat the vegetables that you just put in. And we're gonna let that cook down right until the veggies soften for about 2 minutes or so. Okay, so we're gonna let that cook for about 2 minutes so that the vegetables can soften up, and then we'll move to our next step. Okay, so now that our vegetables, our onion, garlic, and red bell pepper have cooked down, we are going to add the spices. So we will need right? A teaspoon of chili powder, or 2 teaspoons, I'm sorry, of chili powder. Okay, so we'll just add that in. And then we'll need 1 teaspoon of cumin. We also say comino down here in Texas. So 1 teaspoon. Okay. You're gonna add about a tablespoon of tomato paste. You see what I'm holding up here? I actually, just kind of a tip, prefer the tube of tomato paste versus a can or even a box, just because it keeps it a little bit more fresh and available. So you can just kind of throw it in your refrigerator when you're not using it. And then we'll add a couple rounds of sea salt and then a little bit of ground pepper to your taste. And we're just gonna kind of let the flavors cook here so that they can really kind of enhance their flavor. And you'll actually smell that, right? The aromatics of the spices and all is just really yummy, and it just smells really good. You can tell this is gonna be a really good sauce. Okay, so we're just gonna kind of let this cook down, maybe for about a minute or so before we add our next ingredients, okay? Okay, so now that our spices and tomato paste have cooked down a bit, we are going to create kind of like a roux, okay? So you will need a tablespoon of flour. In this case, I like to use arrowroot flour for a variety of different reasons. You know, it's really a great thickening agent, and it's also gluten-free. So if you're somebody who's gluten-free, this is a really great recipe for you. And as opposed to just dumping it in at one time, the key is really to sprinkle it and then mix and stir as you go. So what I like to do is kind of tap this and stir, and then we'll just repeat. Okay, so basically until you see all the white of the flour that's gone. Then again, right, you kind of tap and mix. And this whole process really doesn't take very long. It's just sometimes when you dump the flour at one time, it will make it a little bit more lumpy. So I find this technique to work really well. So again, you know, it's for those of you who are familiar with, you know, the process of making that base, a lot of times for like creamy sort of soups, you do the same sort of process with flour and butter, but this of course is a little bit healthier. Okay, so again, we're just kind of sprinkling that arrowroot flour as we go and stirring it. It smells really good. You can start to smell the spices of the chili powder and the cumin, and of course the garlic, which we know has lots of health benefits as well. Spices are really good for you. Okay, so that was the last of our arrowroot. So I'm just gonna continue to stir until all of the white flour is mixed in well, okay? And then our next step is gonna be adding vegetable stock. So we are a family that is more plant-based, which is why I prefer vegetable stock. But if you were somebody who is a meat eater, you could replace with a chicken stock. So we are gonna add half of a cup, right? So you can kind of see my measuring spoon here. And we're gonna turn it down to like a lower setting. I'd say between like a low medium setting on your stove. And we're just going to really kind of mix that in and stir until it thickens. It's really starting to smell good in here. So again, you're just mixing that broth. I'm using a vegetable stock here, but but you can easily substitute with a chicken stock if you choose. Okay, so we're just kind of letting that thicken up, and you can see that's really starting to look pretty. Okay, I'm kind of a messy cook, so you might see some stuff flying around. Okay, then we are gonna add our can of tomato sauce, a 15-ounce can. If you can find the low sodium, that's always gonna be your better option, just to reduce the salt intake. And you're just gonna pour that in. Okay. And very gently stir, because I've learned this lesson. If you go too fast, you'll get sauce everywhere. All right, so you're just mixing in that vegetable thickening base, right, that we just created with the tomato sauce. And it smells so good. Okay, so you really want to get everything mixed in. Okay, now you will add half of a cup of vegetable stock to this again, or the stock of your choice. So again, if it's chicken, you can use chicken. And we are really going to let this cook for, I would say, about 8 to 10 minutes. And you do want to bring it to a boil, okay? So I, again, am going to kind of have it between the setting of low to medium heat. And just really kind of keep an eye on it so that the bubbles aren't getting everywhere and splashing everywhere. So again, we're going to let this cook for about 8 to 10 minutes, and then we'll move on to our next step, which is pureeing the sauce. Okay, so now that we've let our sauce simmer for 8 to 10 minutes, it smells so good. You can smell the flavors of the spices that we added, that garlic, the tomato paste, the tomato sauce, and you can kind of get an idea of what it should look like. Now, typically what I would recommend is for you to let the sauce cool a little bit before you put it into a food processor. If you don't have a food processor and you have like an immersion blender, that could work too. But just make sure that the type of pan that you're using is deep enough to put the immersion blender in. Otherwise, you'll have sauce going everywhere. But for our demonstration today, we are going to use my lovely little food processor and just put the sauce directly in. Okay? All right, so now that we've done that, I'm just going to close the lid here. And we're gonna puree it. It's gonna be so good, and the flavor is really rich. You'll be able to taste that bell pepper base, the onion, the garlic, the spices that we added, and it'll make it for a really delicious dish. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of check on the sauce, make sure, that smells so good. Make sure all of the vegetables blended as they should, okay? And now we're gonna get to the fun part, which is layering our casserole. Okay, so now we are at the part which I think is the most fun, where we are going to assemble our casserole together. So of course you'll need a casserole dish like you see here. Okay, and this dish, by the way, is gonna make about 6 servings. So it's perfect for our family of 4, you know, because you have leftovers the next day, which is really nice. So you'll just wanna take a spoon and scoop out some of the sauce. And you'll want to just kind of spread it out on the bottom of your casserole dish, okay? And the steps that I'm gonna describe with this first layer are what you are going to just keep repeating until your ingredients are done, okay? All right, so after we have our sauce, then we're gonna get our corn tortilla, okay? If you wanna make it really low carb, you could use zucchini slices. I would for sure recommend using a mandolin, unless you have really amazing knife skills and can slice that zucchini really thin. But that's a really good option too. Just make sure you let your zucchini kind of air dry a little bit before you put it into the casserole. Otherwise it can have a tendency to get a little soggy. Okay, so we're gonna wanna kind of do this pattern that I have here on the casserole. I know you can see it from a different angle. So you want to pattern it this way, and you'll see why in just a moment. So we have our tortillas, and then I like to, again, make it a little bit healthier. So what we're gonna incorporate is organic baby spinach leaves, and altogether you're gonna use about 4 cups. So this is 2 cups right here, just so that you can kind of get an idea of what that looks like. Right, if you're somebody that needs to kind of measure things out. So again, about 4 cups all together. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of dump it in this bowl here. All right, and then we are going to assemble our casserole. So you're just gonna put some of the spinach down directly on top of your corn tortilla, okay, and just kind of spread it out so it's like a thin layer. And my kids have eaten this, and they can't really taste the flavor of the spinach, so that's just kind of a hint for those of you that want to get your kids to eat more vegetables and they're not too crazy about eating spinach in its raw form or cooked down. And then you're just going to want to scoop a little bit of sauce on top of the spinach leaves and spread it out as much as you can. And altogether, you're gonna use about 2 cups of shredded cheddar cheese. There's also lots of mixes, like in the grocery store, you can find like Mexican cheese mixes, which is okay to use as well. I actually like to use a food processor and have it shredded that way. I feel like it gives it a fresher flavor, so just kind of keep that in mind. So even if you just buy like a block of cheddar cheese, you can just put it in your shredding machine, right? Or you could even go old school and grate it. That would work as well. And again, you're gonna need about 2 cups total for the recipe. So here's our 1 cup, all right? So we're gonna double that. And you're just gonna kind of sprinkle as you go and put these layers together, okay? So remember, I said there's a pattern, so now you're gonna take the next 3 tortillas. You're gonna use a total of 9 corn tortillas, by the way. And you're just gonna repeat those same steps, right? So we have our spinach that we're gonna put directly on top of the corn tortilla. Spread it out in a layer. You're gonna get the sauce, that delicious, yummy red sauce with those pureed vegetables. So again, you're getting some nutrition within the sauce that we're adding to the dish. And then you're gonna sprinkle the cheese again. So notice that I'm not really piling on a ton of cheese. I'm really just kind of putting just a little bit, because once it goes into the oven at 375 for about 25 minutes or so, it's going to melt and just kind of ooze out. And then we have our final layer, and you're gonna do that pattern that I mentioned where you're kind of alternating. And we're gonna use the rest of our spinach here. We're gonna add the rest of the sauce. We don't want that sauce to go to waste now. But if you do have some extra sauce, just as kind of a FYI, you could really use the sauce with eggs in the morning. That would be a really good use of it. It will probably keep in your fridge, I would say, for about 3 to 4 days if you have some extra. Usually with the size of casserole dish that I use, I don't really have any extra. Okay, and then again, you're gonna sprinkle some of that cheese on top. Maybe a little bit extra since it's the top layer. Okay, and this is what our enchilada casserole looks like before we pop it in the oven at 375 for about 25 minutes. Okay, so we've had our casserole baking in the oven at 375 for about 25 minutes until it is nice and bubbly, and I'm gonna get it out so you can see what it looks like. Oh my goodness, it smells so good. And you can see the cheese still bubbling. You can see the yummy sauce, right? And then of course, the healthy spinach. So what I like to do whenever I serve this casserole dish, again, remember there's about 6 servings or so. So when I have my plate, I try to get 1 serving of the casserole and balance it out, maybe with a side salad and some sliced avocado. You could even make some guacamole, right? So just smash some avocado up with a little bit of lemon juice, some cilantro, tomato. However you like to prepare your guacamole, that's always a really good side. And then of course we know it's a healthy type of fat as well. So I hope you enjoyed that recipe segment. It's gonna be delicious. I know you're going to love it.